Hello everybody, Maven here, and Season 23 is coming out in about 40 hours, so I wanted to make this video to go over every meta build to look out for in the coming season. After all the huge reveals Bungie gave us last week, we now have more of a grasp on what's about to be meta, so let's go over it. Don't forget to drop a like, and I hope you enjoy. So I feel like a good precursor to this video is mentioning all of the mod nerfs. A lot of the ability spam builds that you know and love are gonna get demolished by these nerfs. So now Heavy-Handed, Firepower, and Reaper have cooldowns, Outreach, Bomber, Distribution, and the glove mods like Impact Induction, so on and so forth, have reduced ability gains. And now in order to use a Kickstarter mod, you have to have at least some amount of armor charge available. So I believe Heart of Inmost Light will be back on the menu because ability spam was so readily available on any build really, so Heart of Inmost Light kind of fell off. But now that it's actually going to be clutch for reviving these ability spam builds, I think it will be meta once again. Now, speaking of ability spam, they are destroying Bonk Titan. Now when you pick up your baby hammer off the ground, you're not getting your hammer charged back instantly, but you're getting it over the course of 1.4 seconds. So that's not the worst thing in the world. I feel like Bonk is still going to be very viable. And typically the Bonk exotics to use are Loreley and Synthoceps. And I think they're still going to be very strong builds. And there are a lot of very solid exotics to use on Solar Titan, but I feel like one that may weasel its way in is Precious Scars. The buff they gave to Precious Scars is substantial. It now says that kills with weapons matching your subclass element now apply Restoration for 3 seconds. And the reason that that's so good is because when you're on Solar, you can have Ember of Empyrean to extend that restoration when you get Solar ability or Solar weapon kills. And aside from healing grenades, this is probably the easiest access to proccing restoration that we've ever had. So Precious Scars is about to be insanely good for survivability, possibly more than Loreley Splendor. And still on the topic of Bonk Titan, I'm sorry to tell you, but Hunter is the new Bonk Titan after the insane Ophidia Spaith buff. This is the buff that I am the most excited about by far. This build is about to be crazy. It's already crazy underrated. I did a video on it before, and I encourage you to go check it out. And I 100% will be revisiting this in the near future after the season releases. You can count on that. And that's my cue as a YouTuber to tell you to don't forget to subscribe because that video's coming soon. So the Ophidia Spaith now grants a stacking knife damage bonus, 30%, 60%, and 100% for 5 seconds, which is a timer that is refreshable when dodging. And that build is already throwing knives constantly because the knock 'em down aspect is already fully refunding your knife charge. And also Gambler's Dodge restores not one but both of your knife charges, regardless of if you have 1 or 0 charges available. And this build is about to hit like a truck. A 100% damage bonus is nutty because the Synthoceps is going down to 165% damage bonus, and this is not too far off. Plus 2 throwing knives are enough to cause a solar ignition, which compensates for the difference. Plus all these throwing knife kills are going to extend your restoration with Ember of Empyrean, so you got the survivability same as Banner of War Titans do. And this build absolutely abuses Gunpowder Gamble. You just get those free ignition grenades like every couple seconds. And also, if that wasn't enough, Solar alone is going to be broken next season because of the Rays of Precision artifact mod. It says when you're radiant, your precision final blows cause solar ignitions. That's just unfair. So with full confidence, I can say that Ophidia Spaith is going to be one of the top 5 strongest PvE builds next season, easily. Next up, let's talk about the Baldorth Wrathweavers. Now, I'm not saying this is for sure, but there is the potential that this could be very powerful in PvP when you pair it with Empowering Rift. You get the tier 2 stasis weapon surge, a 50 HP overshield, and you can stack that on top of your Empowering Rift's damage all together in just 1 rift in PvP. That's going to make some things shred, like certain stasis pulse rifles like the Psy Hermetic or the Syncopation or even the Unending Tempest SMG. So this could potentially be really annoying to deal with. Next up, sniper rifles are getting a flat 15% damage buff across the board, including heavy snipers. Therefore, the Whisper of the Worm has very high potential to be the top DPS option to pair with Divinity over things like linear fusion rifles and Leviathan's Breath. The Thorn Catalyst is a hot topic in the PvP world right now, but it's also going to be insane for PvE because now picking up a Remnant can overflow the magazine up to 40 rounds. And the Thorn is wild right now. Again, another shameless plug, but I did do a Thorn Necrotic Grip video. The Thorn and the Osteostriga are both weapons that pair very well with the Necrotic Grip because they're weapons of sorrow, but the Osteostriga is getting a huge nerf right now, so Thorn Necrotic Grip is definitely going to be the thing to do. And that is no doubt going to be one of the strongest ad clear builds in the whole game. Next up, Kinetic Tremors is getting a huge buff, and the Buzzard is about to be absolutely insane. The Buzzard is already the highest DPS legendary primary weapon in the game right now, but it's just going to get even better. So for non-burst sidearms, they reduced the amount of shots required to proc Kinetic Tremors from 12 down to 8. So the Buzzard with overflowing Kinetic Tremors with extended mag or a backup mag can hold up to 40 rounds in the magazine, and at the current moment, when you fire nonstop, you can proc Kinetic Tremors 2 times in one magazine. But after the buff, I'm not saying this is for sure, but there is a slight chance that we will be able to proc Kinetic Tremors 3 times in one magazine. Now the Buzzard already kind of feels like an exotic because of how powerful it is, but if it manages to proc it 3 times in one magazine, it will absolutely feel like an exotic tier weapon. Next up, Glaives are getting a very exciting rework. They increased the projectile speed by 30%, and they're going to increase the projectile damage by 25% in PvE. Now they did reduce some of the damage values in PvP, but Rapid Fires, which the only one of that archetype right now is the Greasy Luck from the Ghost of the Deep Dungeon, is still going to do over 100 damage, meaning you can still 2-tap at a very high TTK. But the most exciting thing for PvP here is that they reduced the delay after firing before you can melee again from 0.75 seconds to 0.2 seconds. Now, I do not know off the top of my head how much the glaive melee does in PvP, but aggressive frames, which is the Judgment of Kel'Garath, dealing 123 damage, that could potentially be very oppressive in the hands of a very skilled PvP player. So they can jump in at you, shoot a glaive projectile, and immediately melee 0.2 seconds later to kind of pick up like an insta-kill. It's going to feel somewhat like a shotgun that has a range potential. So that could be very good. And another very exciting change, especially for PvP, is that they're making it so the glaive shield now regenerates itself by 1% per second. Before, you would have to get ranged damage in order to get some glaive charge, and that's the reason that I hated glaives in PvP, because it felt like you would only win gunfights in which you have glaive shield energy unless you catch somebody off guard. So now that it regens itself, say you can just run around for like 20 seconds. If you're alive for 20 seconds, your glaive can get 20% charge. And that alone is going to be enough to win a gunfight and block enough damage. So again, I'm not saying this is for sure, but glaives do sure have a chance at being very good in PvP. But now the next thing I wanted to emphasize is back up at the top of this list. They increased the projectile damage in PvE by 25%. And if we take a look at the Winter Bite, it's getting another buff to get another 25% projectile damage buff. So in total, 50% more damage for the Winter Bite. It could potentially be a raid boss DPS option, so we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. Now, still on the topic of glaives, typically when you use the glaive on Titan before, you would use it on Synthoceps, but they did a big nerf to it like 2 or 3 seasons ago. But now it looks like they're unnerfing it because they're increasing the glaive melee bonus to 100%, up from 50%. So you're going to have double damage with glaives on Synthos, and that could be very strong. But another thing I'm very excited about here for glaives is Worm God Caress. They are reworking this exotic so that instead of it being a timer on the left side of your screen that you refresh by getting melee kills, it is now going to be a meter. So it's going to tick up the more you get melee kills and slowly but surely drain, and you can keep on filling it up by getting melee kills. So I feel like this new rework is going to allow you to have the Burning Fist buff a little bit more consistently. And that can be very cool with glaives. So after the bonk nerf and the glaive buff, I feel like there's potential to see an uprise in glaives on Titan, especially since glaives also work with Banner of War. But real quickly, let's take a look at the Triton Vice, because the Triton Vice is doing the same thing as the Synthoceps. With Synthoceps, to get bionic enhancements, you have to be surrounded, and you're going to get a 100% glaive damage buff. But Triton Vice, it now says when you're surrounded, you get a 100% glaive damage buff. It's literally just Synthoceps but on Hunter. But the Trident Vice also gives Glaives a lot of other cool abilities. And another shameless plug here, but I did a recent video on a Trident Vice build, and I'm very proud of that build. It's one of the funnest builds I've made in a long time, and I got a lot of positive feedback from people who have tried it out. So I highly encourage you to go and check out that video. I'll link it in the card up above. It does not disappoint. And after the Glaive rework and the Trident Vice rework, I feel like that build's about to be insane. And finally, the last thing to mention here are these crazy artifact mods revolving around stasis and crystals and shattering frozen enemies. And obviously it's a stasis focused season, so your typical run-of-the-mill meta stasis builds will be even more meta. And again, for the last time, last shameless plug of the video, I promise, I did do a recent video going over these meta stasis builds for next season. There is the Osmiomancy Gloves build for Warlock, the Renewal Grass build for Hunter, and the Cadmus Ridge Lance Cap build for Titan. So again, I'll link the video down below in the description if you'd like to go and check it out. Now on to the conclusion. I think that the meta is going to see a huge shift next season. Strand Titan with Synthoceps is getting a huge nerf. I think it will still see play, but the heavy-handed nerf is really what's going to hurt it, and also the Banner of War nerf. But there will be some builds that remain meta, such as Sunbracers, because it works off the exotic perk, you know? Things that work off the exotic perk are still going to be good, but anything that relied on like impact induction and kickstarts and bomber and all that good stuff, those would be a little bit less good. So we'll have to wait and see. But obviously Stasis and Solar, we know for sure is going to be meta. So that's going to do for this one. I hope you enjoyed. And if you are new here, I'm going to ask you right now, please consider subscribing. We're about to go crazy on the first week of season 23. I'm gonna be uploading every single day. We're gonna review all of the exotic changes and go over some crazy new builds with these changes. So I hope you stay tuned for that. Remember to hit the like button if you enjoyed, and I will catch you in season 23.